10 history lessons your teacher lied to you about. 1. Paul Revere's midnight ride never happened. Revere never would have said the British are coming. Colonial Americans called themselves British. British troops would have been referred to as regulars. Revere's ride was actually secret. It didn't make him famous during his lifetime. 2. Nero didn't play the fiddle as Rome burned. The fiddle was only invented 1400 years after Nero's death. Nero wasn't even in Rome during the Great Fire of 64. This myth was invented by Roman historian Tacitus. Nero was suspected of starting the fire, but it was never confirmed. Nero also spent money on relief efforts afterward. 3. Orson Welles' The War of the Worlds didn't cause a panic. The 1938 radio play wasn't all that popular. Only about 2% of listeners tuned in to listen. There's no evidence that anyone believed it to be true. The myth of people fleeing an alien invasion was invented by newspapers. They saw radio as competition and tried to make it look dangerous. 4. Manhattan wasn't sold for $24 worth of trinkets. There are no documents that attest to the supposed sale. In fact, the local native tribes had no concept of land ownership. Moreover, the Dutch did business with a tribe that had no right to Manhattan. The $24 amount was calculated in the 19th century. Modern historians say the myth was invented by the Dutch. 5. Columbus didn't prove the earth was round. Medieval Europeans didn't think it was flat. The Greeks had proved it was a globe back in 500 BC. This was common knowledge at the time of Columbus. This myth was invented in the 17th century. 6. The U.S. entered World War II long before Pearl Harbor. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, but U.S. warships started escorting British ships in the summer of 1941. That's because the Lend-Lease program already existed. American ships engaged German U-boats. In September, FDR declared naval war on Germany and Italy. 7. 300 Spartans didn't hold off 10,000 Persians. Only 300 soldiers guarded the narrow path at Thermopylae, but the battle was not confined to that path. King Leonidas of Sparta had support of 5,000 soldiers. They came from the neighboring states to defend Sparta. There were, however, as many as 100,000 attacking Persians. So it's no surprise the Greeks lost the battle. 8. Marco Polo didn't bring pasta from China. Durum wheat was introduced by Arabs in the 9th century. The Arabs conquered Sicily, and that's when pasta was born. Marco Polo traveled to China 400 years later. He did describe pasta in his journals, but he was already using a familiar term. The myth of Chinese pasta was invented by American pasta producers. 9. Charles Lindbergh wasn't the first to fly across the Atlantic. In 1927, Lindbergh completed a flight from New York to Paris. It wasn't the first non-stop transatlantic flight in history. The first was made by John Alcock and Arthur Brown in 1919. Lindbergh was the first to complete a solo transatlantic flight. 10. Roman gladiators rarely fought to the death. Movies always show gladiatorial fights as life or death matches, but this was an exception rather than the rule. The best Roman gladiators were prize fighters. They were very valuable and treated like celebrities. They had access to medical care and lived long lives. Sacrificing them would have made zero sense.